It's pretty normal for us to get hyped for a new video game that's coming out. Our hobby is a large one, and the devs definitely understand this and get us excited for what's to come in the future. But some of these developers seem to have missed the memo that said your game needs to be good before you start saying it's good. Welcome everybody to Trending10, Nemo here, and today we're going to be counting down the top 10 overhyped video games that failed at launch. And just to be clear, although some of these games on this list are pretty bad, just because the game is in this video doesn't mean it was poorly received. In fact, some of these games are actually pretty solid. However, there was something about the marketing or the hype train that ended up dooming its release, despite the quality of the actual product. Alright guys, let's get started. At the number 10 spot, we have SimCity 2013. This game was looking to reboot the long-running SimCity franchise and bring it into the next generation. Hype was pretty high for this game, as it's not every day that a series as legendary as SimCity gets a full-on, big-budget makeover. However, everything fell apart when SimCity had one of the worst launches in gaming history, largely due to EA's decision to go with always-online policies, completely going away with offline play, which was one of the main aspects of previous titles. Even after EA removed many of the always-online aspects of the reboot, players would still experience the frequent crashes, frame drops, deleted saves, and other tons of issues that overall contributed to the game's downfall. Number 9, Aliens Colonial Marines. This game was supposed to be amazing, and to be honest, I'm still salty about the state of it upon launch. Developed by Gearbox Software and published by Sega, Aliens Colonial Marines serves as a sequel to the classic James Cameron films Aliens and puts you in the shoes of a group of Marines who go to investigate what happened on LV-426. The footage shown off at E3 was awesome, blending FPS action with horror as he battled against the xenomorphs. Paul had very smart AI and used the environment in unique ways. When the game launched, it was revealed that something shady happened behind the scenes, as the game shown off at E3 was completely gone and replaced with something that was clearly slapped together way too quickly and was not ready for release. It was ugly, buggy, unfun, uninteresting, and had awful writing, and is widely regarded as one of the worst games of all time. There are tons of conspiracy theories as to what happened behind the scenes here, with many thinking that Gearbox had pulled funding and resources from Colonial Marines in order to work on the upcoming Borderlands. Whatever the reasons were, Alien Colonial Marines definitely deserves a spot on this list. Number 8, Evolve. This multiplayer game had a pretty interesting and unique concept. A team of players would rally together and try to hunt down and kill a player-controlled monster who was trying to eliminate the hunters or just survive long enough to run out the clock. Now, in theory, this game could have been super fun, and if we're being honest, it was fun for a few matches. But the problem with Evolve was the fact that there was really only one way to play it. And when you pay $60 for a game, you tend to expect a little more from that. Evolve's player base died extremely quickly due to the lack of content and awful handling of the DLC, which included extremely overpriced gun skins and new monsters that probably should have been in the game at launch. Now, a quick note to all developers: when you put out a full-price game that lacks content, it's probably not a good idea to pump out a bunch of unnecessary DLC shortly after launch. Number 6, Homefront The Revolution. The first Homefront game was an interesting case. While the concept was interesting and some of the gameplay mechanics were unique, it suffered from a bad writing, repetitive level design, and technical issues. Homefront The Revolution was intended to be a reboot of the series, set in the same universe but with new characters and new story elements. However, The Revolution suffered all of the exact same issues the first game did, including bad writing, repetitive level design, and technical issues. Not only that, but The Revolution completely removed online multiplayer for reasons unexplained, which is strange considering that the multiplayer was one of the main things that got people to enjoy the first game, despite the lackluster campaign. When you reboot a game and look to correct the original mistakes, you probably shouldn't repeat those exact same mistakes. Number 5, Titanfall. This game was developed by Respawn Entertainment, a company made up of ex-Infinity Ward employees who left after a legal battle with Activision involving the lack of royalties paid during the development and release of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. Due to the company being made up of critically acclaimed developers, Titanfall was hyped like crazy, looking to be the Call of Duty killer. Unfortunately, gamers were pretty let down when the game finally launched in 2014. Titanfall's core gameplay was a ton of fun and was very polished, but the lack of content is really what led the game's downfall. No private lobbies or custom matches, and a good amount of technical issues at launch, and an awful campaign that clearly had so little effort put into it that you have to wonder why it was put in at all. Titanfall managed to make many of the fixes of its launch problems, but at that time, the new Call of Duty and Battlefield games had been released, and Respawn's first outing as a company had been pretty much forgotten. Number 4, Tony Hawk Ride. Now, Tony Hawk games have always been a ton of fun, even for those who had never stood on a skateboard. Unfortunately, the series had taken a pretty hard dive in recent years, and all of that started with Tony Hawk Ride. Instead of being a traditional Tony Hawk game, Ride decided to create a new way to play and get players more involved with it by adding a life-size skateboard controller that you would stand on and use to control your character via weight shifts, turns, and kicks. The idea was very interesting, and the hype was pretty high leading up to its release due to the new technology being used. However, all of that fell apart when the game launched and the new skateboard controllers didn't work at all. And when I say didn't work at all, I mean the thing literally didn't work at all. Tons of players couldn't even get the controller to connect to their consoles, and even if they managed to get it up and running, there was a massive delay between the character's movements and the game's reading that it wasn't even worth trying to play. Number 3, Star Wars The Force Unleashed 2. The first Force Unleashed game was a ton of fun and had a very interesting and well-written story. You played as Starkiller, Darth Vader's secret apprentice between episodes 3 and 4 during the Purge of the Jedi. You ventured around the galaxy hunting down the remaining Jedi, all while learning new ways of the Force and deciding which side you really wanted to be with, the light or the dark. The sequel looked to follow up the story, but was troubled and rushed during development. When The Force Unleashed 2 hit shelves, it was very short and very shallow. The combat was heavily dumbed down from its predecessor, and the game developed into a 6-hour button masher as opposed to an interesting hack and slash like the first one. The Force Unleashed 2 was such a flop that the planned conclusion to the trilogy was canned and the story is no longer even canon. Number 2, Sonic the Hedgehog in 2006. One of the worst games ever made. There was a lot of hype surrounding Sonic 2006 leading up to its release, although it seems silly now that people expected anything great out of this title. Sonic 06 had a very troubled development that ultimately led it to being rushed and not optimized at all, which created countless technical issues like long load times, terrible physics, and tons of glitches, and an overall unpolished feel to the gameplay, even when it was working properly. Aside from the technical issues, Sonic 06 was just an awful game, as the level design was bad, the writing and voice acting were subpar, and there wasn't anything memorable about it. Even the worst Sonic games have at least had some elements that are good, but Sonic 06 still manages to come up short of even one good section. Number 1, No Man's Sky. We all know what happened here. There's really not much we could say about No Man's Sky that you don't already know. It was marketed and anticipated to be a new style of game that would usher in a new era of gaming. An extremely vast world full of planets and life forms that not even the developers were aware of. This all sounds amazing. Well, unfortunately, when the game launched, it was revealed that this was one big scam, and hardly any of the advertised features were actually in the game. Boring gameplay, no online multiplayer despite it being printed on the box, a pointless center of the universe despite the developers explicitly stating that it wouldn't be what it ended up being, and one of the worst optimized games that I've ever seen on the PS4, as it would freeze up and crash constantly. No Man's Sky was a huge failure on every level, and there's a good chance that the developers are never going to make a game again due to them damaging their reputation so heavily with this one. Guys, that wraps it up with this video. Let us know what you thought of in the comment section below. Which one on this list was your favorite, and if we missed any, let us know down below. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, turn your post notifications on, and until next time, it's been Nemo from Trending10, and I will talk to you guys on the next video.